Currently, the trajectory for Rhino is that we are sliding down the slope towards extinction.
They kill the rhinos, they cut their horns, they sell them for money. They really need protection. They need to be protected from us.
I'd like to say thank you so much to everyone at Global Conservation Force. They have been absolutely phenomenal and agreed to match our funding for our security campaign to look after these little guys, make sure that they're safe and secure and well looked after. So thank you so much for your ongoing support. You guys are absolutely phenomenal. So the Zululand Conservation Trust is a non-profit entity operating in northern Zululand in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, South Africa. The non-profit serves various different functions focused on conservation, parks and people. The trust also focuses on protected area management and are the custodians of Manyoni Private Game Reserve. Function is to manage the protected area at a very high standard, ensuring that we can do and contribute more towards conservation efforts, particularly endangered species such as pangolin and wild dog. Part of the protected area management is also wildlife protection, ensuring that we have adequate law enforcement and technology to protect endangered species and limit wildlife trafficking and poaching in the region. Then the third component is the Zululand Rhino Orphanage, which is a rehabilitation facility that serves all of the rhino reserves in the province, state-owned, private-owned or community-owned. And rhinos that are orphaned from poaching come to the facility where they are rehabilitated, ultimately to be released back into the wild. So the last year we've seen a significant increase in poaching. Specifically bushmeat poaching has gone up significantly. We've also seen a massive increase in rhino poaching, which has also resulted in increased number of rhinos orphaned as a result of the poaching. Big numbers coming into the facility and obviously a huge draw on funds. We've also seen an increase in unemployment and local economies suffering, poverty becoming a real issue, which is obviously driving the bushmeat poaching and rhino poaching issues that we have. So KZN is in trouble. We've seen figures this year worse than we have any years historically, which again is very cumbersome, and we keep aiming to invest in implementing mitigation to try and prevent increased poaching, reducing the number of rhinos poached and supporting communities so that they can sustain themselves and uplifting livelihoods. Rhino dehorning is a critical part of what we do, and the reason why we dehorn our rhino is because we're going through a poaching crisis and have been since about 2008, and it's sort of escalated since then. My name is Karen Oudendal. I'm the Managing Director here at Manyoni Private Game Reserve, and my role today is to ensure that the whole dehorning activity runs smoothly. So we'll meet the guests early in the morning. We do a safety briefing, explain to them exactly what they can expect. We have rhino monitors that are dedicated to monitoring rhino, and they'll go out early, find the animal so that we reduce the helicopter time. We'll go up in the helicopter along with a veterinarian. To find the rhino will be darted from the air. It takes between 6 and 8 minutes for the drugs to take effect, and we'll use the helicopter to manipulate the rhino into an area where the ground crew can get to it quickly, and then we'll get started on the work. The veterinarian will reverse the immobilization drugs and the rhino wakes up. It's made a big difference for us here because it has given us breathing room. It's extremely rewarding as well at the end of the day is to see the successes that we do achieve. Our key priorities are the Zululand Rhino Orphanage and funding for feed and rehabilitation of the orphans. Milk is very costly, veterinary care and dry feed, supplementary feed like hay, teff is expensive. And with the number of animals we have at the facility now, it's becoming a real issue and desperately in need of funds there. Our law enforcement department, increasing tech, we're desperate to get drones on board. It's obviously very costly, and more boots on the ground that can assist us in patrol coverage, etc.
Today at the orphanage, we were going over the basics of training, so kind of introduced them to a whole lot of new concepts, but then gave them some good examples because also having experience in rhino training, I was able to kind of show them some things that they could relate to. So the reasons that would be beneficial here are that they don't have to do as much sedation or anesthesia. They'll be able to do a lot more voluntary-based sessions. This will actually bring down stress in general, so if they actually enjoy the sessions that they're doing to get any type of husbandry care done, then they're in effect being enriched rather than it being a stressful process. They're actually getting some fun mental challenges and getting goodies and getting scratches all in the process, and meanwhile they're helping the caretakers take good care of them.
So avoiding using sedatives is huge, especially for orphaned animals that come from poaching backgrounds, that they've already encountered a lot of stress and a lot of trauma. So you would want to avoid that as much as possible, and this really allows us to do that. We can do a lot more and do a lot more research and collect a lot more data. For example, collecting bloods, doing fecal samples or urine analysis. All of that can now be done without having to overstress the animal.
Thor was a Bavarian mountain hound that was donated to the reserve by Global Conservation Force. He was bred and trained in the Netherlands by Scent Imprint for conservation dogs, and he's been trained to track humans and poachers, but also has a very unique skill of tracking pangolins. With our pangolin project, post-release monitoring is extremely important, and Thor's been invaluable by helping us relocate a pangolin that we hadn't seen for more than 2 years. Rhino is a Dutch Shepherd that had been bred in South Africa and donated to the unit by Global Conservation Force. He was trained to track humans and poachers by Zululand Academy, and Rolo's strength is that he can discriminate between different individuals, which comes in handy with a crime scene that is contaminated. Although Rolo has got a very sweet disposition, he's a very large and intimidating dog, which acts as a deterrent. Canines on the game reserve is such a good tool in our toolbox, and we're forever needing to adjust and add to that toolbox for us to combat the problems that we are faced with currently. Manyoni is super proud and grateful for the rangers and everything that they put into their work on a daily basis. It's an extremely dangerous and challenging job. They put their lives at risk on a daily basis, knowing that they've got families at home, so that we are able to save and protect the species on it.
So a lot of people say, sure, you rangers live the life. And that is very true. We are awakened with lions roaring in the morning. We see beautiful sunsets and breathtaking sunrises. We walk in the wild every single day. But that life doesn't come without sacrifice. We often get awakened by urgent radio calls at all hours of the night and day. Our days often start at sunset and end at sunrise. And walking in the wild also means that you walk the fine line between life and death. So we must show support to the men and women that wear green. They value animal life over their own, and they risk their lives every day to protect the wildlife for future generations. People ask, so why do you do it? And the answer is simple. If you want to change the world, it starts with you. So if you're sitting at home and you're wondering what you can do, my first answer is to come and visit a reserve, join the conservation team and see what they do behind the scenes. The more tourists we get to the reserves, the more jobs it creates, the less unemployment we have, and that indirectly results in less poaching in the parks and creates resilience. So it's critical for us. Tourism does fund conservation and it does help protect wildlife and endangered species.
Alrighty, sorry about that, everybody. So we had a little bit of a delay. It seems that the live broadcast was stalled. So we did a lovely intro to ourselves. So thank you all for tuning in. I know we have the GCF Facebook, YouTube, Instagram, and I see Anthony's channel streaming live. So we're going to start a little bit backwards now. My name is Mike Veal. I'm the CEO and founder of Global Conservation Force. I work in the field as a ranger instructor, and I work in a lot of counter wildlife trafficking. I am more than honored to introduce Karin to the stage today. On behalf of our partnership that's been going on since 2017 in multiple aspects of the Zululand Conservation Trust. And Karin, let me pass it back to you so you can explain to everybody who's watching live now who you are, how you got started, and kind of where we need to go.
Thank you, Mark. So I am the CEO of the Zululand Conservation Trust. I'm also the managing director of Manyoni Private Game Reserve and the founder of the Zululand Rhino Orphanage. I've been working in wildlife and rhino conservation for about 20 years. I've basically devoted my life and my entire career to the species. And I'm just glad that we could show a little bit to the world about what we do and what rhino conservation is about.
Well, that's going to be a lot of fun for the topic today. I apologize. I muted myself. Now, Anthony, we had a lovely intro with you as well for everybody who is tuning in now. Anthony is one of our celebrity ambassadors, which we are super stoked to have you as part of the team. And thank you for using your platform and your voice to help us reach more people. But conservation is not new to you. And let's hit your background real quick. You're not just, quote, a celebrity ambassador. You do things and you have a background.
Thanks, Mike. I appreciate it. Yeah, I'm going to first start off by saying that these two folks right here are completely underselling themselves. I mean, this conservation sphere is like really indebted to them. I just messaged somebody on LinkedIn the other day that was in like the wildlife trade and he just retired. He was on LinkedIn and I was like, oh yeah, so I'm working a little bit with the Global Conservation Force. He goes, those guys are amazing. And like, just like offhanded, a lot of these conservation folks that have been around forever, just these folks are just second nature to them. So that's really cool to see. I was brought on because I was doing some goofy nature education videos down here in Reno. I live up here in Lake Tahoe, but that was like an hour drive to Reno. And one of the people that worked for GCF, Brierly, was down there. She's like, hey, you got to connect with these folks. These are the real deal. And yeah, I mean, I really just want to use my platforms to really get people to understand how important nature is and get out and adventure. And like what we were talking about, like the tourism is really important. Once countries see that this is a viable way to conserve and to have money come into a country, I mean, that's amazing. That's longevity. So yeah, I've been doing conservation for like 10 years, mainly education based, writing curriculum for kids, being out in the field a bit, doing conservation in the US. And then I've been to, I think 27 countries as of
27.
That's
amazing.
amazing. Incredible.
Thanks. But you guys make those trips worth it. So let's do this.
Sure. So everybody who caught the video, we reset the video and basically at the beginning we were saying, Karin is the big boss over at the Zululand Conservation Trust as well as the Mignoni operations. And there are many different specialty projects under the trust, not all on site. And I think it's really important to kind of share like how that runs, Karin. It's not just like the government's funding this and you get a guaranteed set of funding and all of your woes are handled. I mean, you're not only managing multiple teams and specialist projects, but there's a lot of fundraising involved to keep things moving and to try to expand, because the more that comes in, the more good you can do. You want to kind of talk to how that works in your arena?
Yeah, so Mark, I mean, everything we do out of need. We don't take on projects because it's nice to have or to look good on our profile. The Rhino orphanage was established because we started seeing rhino calves orphaned from poaching, and there was no facility in the province that could take these animals. So we set up a small structure to take on 2 of the calves that were orphaned from Mignoni, and then because of the crisis in the area, we became flooded with rhino calves. We had to learn how all of that works. It's very specialized care. It takes passion, dedication. But we sort of, engaged with everyone, got to know how to work with orphaned rhinos. I mean, I'm an ecologist and wildlife specialist. Rehabilitation is a whole different kettle of fish. But we managed to learn how to do that and have had massive success and have been massive service to population of over 3,500 rhino. In the KZN region. We've also been very involved, obviously, with law enforcement. Rhino poaching is a serious issue at, reserve scale and even at a regional scale. We've invested a lot of money in setting up, or we're in the process of setting up a regional ops room to provide remote monitoring support, boots on the ground, drone surveillance at regional scale. It's becoming more and more critical. These syndicates that are operating are using more advanced technology. So we have to try and stay ahead of the game. Otherwise, we're going to lose this fight. And, I'm sad to say that it already feels like we're losing the fight. A lot of our big populations, 2 of the ones being in Kruger National Park, the second biggest population in the world being in Zululand Conservation Trust, those populations are in decline, and we are very close to it. Zululand is one of our neighbors, and we try and provide them for as much support as we can. But it is really a massive, massive challenge.
Yeah, I mean, I feel like there's probably some folks in our chats that have been to South Africa or been to other parts of the continent. But to kind of catch a little bit of catch everyone up a little bit. So there are 5 species of living rhino as described as in scientifically right now. And those have subpopulations as well. And we are commonly referring to the South African population of white and black rhino. White rhino have the largest population alive today. Ancestrally speaking, there was quite a big swath of white rhino up and down the continent. Now, a lot of those populations have shrunk into heavily protected or heavily managed reserve spaces, which Karin is very in tune with. And this is, to put it out blankly, it's being fueled by a demand from Southeast Asia. So that purchase power, and we'll call it predation on poverty or access to some sophisticated organized crime, it's sparking this conflict of where there's conservationists holding the front line and Karin Shoes not only holding the front line, but saving baby rhinos from the second phase of what's going on. And Anthony, have you ever met a rhino before, a wild rhino?
Yeah, actually, I've been to Kruger. I was back in Kruger, I think in 2018, 2017. And yeah, just like the symbiosis with the rest of the animals really is what took me the most. Like, I mean, I always thought like the Lion King itself, I mean, obviously I'm going to bring up that movie, but like, I thought that itself, it was like such an over exaggeration of like all these happy animals living side by side. But there is so much symbiosis that they really just acknowledge each other, but also just kind of like shrug each other off. I mean, just birds on their backs and just like, yeah, if you're not immediately threatened in the food chain, like things just really coexist. And it was really surprising to see that specifically with rhinos.
What, with your kind of initial view of Kruger, outside of knowing the human element of poaching, what would you assume would be a risk for rhinos environmentally, like a predator escape type situation?
Oh boy. I don't know. It's hard because I've gone down the rabbit hole so far to remember what it would have been like before. But I would say that, I mean, from my end, of course, it's very subjective because I'm in education. Like, I think the biggest threat there is the barriers of where these parks and these places are. The folks just aren't educated on the positive impacts of these animals to their local areas. And so places that have farmlands, of course, are going to hate elephants, stuff like the elephants are going and taking over stuff. So just that level of education for those areas to be like, yeah, just a basic ecology class could really help a lot of these like local folks understand how much of a champion these animals should be for their lands. And I think, I mean, any conservation is 10 times better. I mean, by getting the folks involved, the community involved, and that really speaks well to exactly what you two do.
So, Karin, I have a question to tie up for this. In the space of wild outside of humans, I know we commonly get asked who are the predators of rhinos, and this goes hand in hand with the horn trims. Do you want to talk to that, and then we'll come in back to what the rescue of a baby rhino looks like?
So we're talking about natural predators for rhinos?
Yeah.
Yeah, so it would mainly be lions, the only predator big enough to potentially impact on rhino, and that would be also only rhino calves. So, and that is also a very small or very small likelihood that lion are going to focus on rhino's predation. In the landscape that lion move in, the encounter rate is what matters. In other words, how many impalas are going to see before they see a rhino, and a lot more. The risk of injury when they try and catch an impala is far less than it would be if they try to catch a rhino. The mother's going to fend the calf, and they could potentially also get injured. So that is a very, there are certain areas in Kruger and some of the really, really big areas where the lions actually become quite specialized in taking down large prey. But for the most part, rhino population growth would be exponential if it wasn't for the fact that they are, being killed by humans, really.
So I think that's a really good point, to make is, unfortunately, the big bad humans are the trouble on the block, realistically speaking, when it comes to preserving a species or space for species. But I think it's also really important that we are not here to place blame, and we're not here to point those specific situations, because there's a ton of progress being made, as well as there's still what we say, like, we're still in the house fire. We're still in the middle of the rhino poaching crisis. Karin, you want to talk about what happens at like 0-0 moment? You get a call, and there's a downed rhino, and now it's time to rescue a calf from a park, and it's not, obviously it's not going to be somewhere within immediate reach for you guys. Let's say it's 1 to 2 hours away. What does that rescue scenario look like, and how is that going to integrate into the orphanage itself?
Yeah, so that's when the blood pressure goes up and the adrenals go through the roof, and you sort of, go into go mode. So at a 2 or so hour distance from us, we ordinarily wait for very clear reports as to what the situation is, whether the calf is very weak, and more particularly, what is the age of the calf. If the calf is small enough that it could potentially fit in the helicopter, we would fly it to us. That means we can get it stabilized at the facility as quickly as possible. If the calf is too big, unfortunately, to fit into the helicopter, then we would, we've got a specialized trailer that we look on one of our big trucks, and we get onto the main road as fast as possible to get to site so that we can load the calf into the specialized trailer. As soon as we get there, ordinarily the veterinarian would have immobilized, or we go in with them. We'll immobilize the calf, blindfold it, put earplugs in, and make sure that we take all visual and audio stimulation out of the equation while the animal is anesthetized, basically. We will put it on a stretcher, quite a lot of manpower, and load it into the trailer. We immediately get the calf onto a drip, in other words, getting fluids into the system as quickly as possible. And then we would keep that animal on a IV drip with fluids while we are traveling back to the facility. Dehydration is normally the biggest issue that we deal with, because these calves would have potentially been without milk from their mum for extended periods of time. And then as soon as we get to the facility, then we start our work. We would try and get the calf onto a bottle as fast as possible as well, because as quick as we can get nutrition into them outside of just hydration, the greater the chances are of them recovering quickly and going down that slippery slope where they just start deteriorating and they don't come back. And I can elaborate from there. It's then quite a long process to get them to the point where they can link up with friends, etc. But that's sort of the initial capture and getting to the site as quickly as possible sort of work we do.
Well, thank you for going over that, because I think, first of all, it's not easy to manage the orphanage or a rescue, but then also there's so many other things in place. Anthony, what are some of the questions you would have about kind of Karin's life after seeing our intro video?
Yeah.
What comes to mind there?
Karin, I mean, so the thought of like, yeah, we'll put the rhino in the helicopter if it fits, but if not, we'll take it in a trailer. I mean, what's the process of getting a baby rhino on a trailer? What does that look like? Is it a roll? Is it like a pickup? I'm very curious.
So the trailer we have is designed for picking up, some of the calves we get are up to 300 kilos. That's a calf.
Jeez.
That's baby rhino. So, and that's a heavy animal. So what the trailer is quite specialized. It's got a ramp at the back that we can drop. And then we'd load the rhino on a stretcher. And basically it's just manpower. Ordinarily I'd get 4 or 5 guys, and we try with a slightly heavier calf, it'll be up to 6 people. And we load it on a big stretcher, which has got quite a few handles along the side, and we lift and move the animal into the trailer. That animal is immobilized, so at least we're not trying to deal with a moving weight. But yeah, and then once in the trailer there's bedding there, the calves are quite safe. And then we've also got a barrier that allows us to inspect the calf and work with it without us potentially getting hurt should they wake up.
Beautiful. And we did get a question in the chat from the username is, oh, was this a bad idea? But their question was, let's see. Oh, what's the story on how to get into conservation and specifically rhinos? So I'm sure you work with a lot of folks that just pop in every once in a while, or they stay for a long period of time. But what's the usual process look like for somebody being inspired by rhinos to become you?
Sure. So I think, and I get asked this a lot, the best way to get into it, to be honest, is having a conservation background, university degree, etc., to definitely help in biology, zoology. Those things are very important. Going to university is good if you can afford to. But guiding is critical. It's a foundation for just about anyone that's involved in conservation. As a foundation, they would have started as a guide. I started as a guide. I was actually a guide taking guests around one of the lodges in the park. I actually did a bit of housekeeping myself before I was able to, start working in more conservation type of environment. The guiding is really, really good because it allows you to gain a foundation. If you don't have any experience, you haven't lived in the bush all your life, taking guests to show them impalas and rhinos and giraffes and things like that help you gain knowledge. It helps you get experience. You get to gain experience on watching animal behavior, etc. And that is really critical and important for you, or knowledge for you to gain while you are sort of getting your foot in the door in terms of conservation. And thereafter that, just work twice as hard as anyone else. Longer hours, last to go to bed and the first to be up. It's important because people then notice and then they're like, sure, this is a really hardworking person. Let's give it an opportunity to get involved in some of the other projects that we run that's not necessarily tourism focused. And that's sort of how I got on my path in terms of rhino conservation. I was studying part-time at that point in time because studies are expensive and you're trying to work in an income while you find your feet. But it basically, if you want to get started, guide. Volunteering is also important. If you're not in an environment where there's guiding and you from the States, come and volunteer with us and first spend some time there so you can also see whether it's really something you want to do. It could be very challenging. It's a lot of physical hard work. So yeah, maybe explore that. And then if you fall in love with it, then pursue. Absolutely.
That's awesome. Yeah, I think a lot of what you do is incredible. And for some people, they can't really imagine getting that far into it yet, but know that like the folks that are watching, getting from where you're at now to just helping out the planet in ways that you couldn't even imagine, it's not that big of a leap. Expressing interest is the first step. And
Yes.
I mean, literally, I just like texted Mike one day and then we just got off, and like whatever skill you have, you can totally use it to your advantage. And it's, I think that's really exciting, but thanks. Yeah. That's really cool. Guiding is such a well-rounded set of skills that you have to acquire. I think that's super vital.
It really is. And I have to give a shout out to the guides in specifically Southern Africa that I've been around a lot. They know nature so well. The platform that teaches and certifies people who walk you out into the bush and or take you around, like you're like the encyclopedia of naturalists in that space and really, really bring it to life. And there are some programs in the US like it, but you really have to be kind of a little more formalized in your path of profession before you get there. And in South Africa specifically, like becoming a guide is super cool because they can tell you the plants, the bugs, the birds, the rhinos, and a lot of things in between. And it brings to life everything for the guests in a completely different way. And it really makes it special, which is a very important connection for people who are able to travel. But if, like you're saying, Karin, getting your foot in the industry, you're also starting with like a really solid base of animal knowledge for that environment. We had another question, and I wanted to hit it because I think it's a really good one. It kind of gives an idea about what's going on. And we were asked, where is poaching most prominent So what we're talking about here is we are actually looking at South Africa. So South Africa is the hardest hit for rhino poaching as a country and a total, I guess, population of rhinos, black and white rhinos. If we look up here on the map to the left, Namibia is also dealing with some stuff, and so are some of the other Southern African countries. Now, when it comes to the annual death toll for rhinos, South Africa's hit the hardest, and that's not only because of the numbers coming out that we are seeing for just factual value. It's because that's the largest population of white rhinos remaining. So it's, important to note when, where, and how these numbers are coming out. So we commonly don't see numbers regularly from all the other participating countries who have rhinos. And I think that's important because we see one number and then that's what's staged as the international number of what's going on, but it's missing many other countries in the rhino poaching issue. So again, for those who are joining us today on the call, we have myself, Mike Veal from Global Conservation Force, Anthony Porter, who's one of our awesome celebrity ambassadors, and Karen Odenall of the Zululand Conservation Trust, right there on the banner that just popped up. And she's got so many other hats here. So we highly encourage you guys to hit us with some questions in the comments. We're more than happy to take those questions and answer, especially if they're hard ones. We have a wealth of knowledge here. We are limited to about maybe 20 more minutes max, depending on how the live started. We had a little bit of a delay and the live didn't broadcast immediately, so we had to restart. So if you're just joining us, there was a video and we are going to post this on our YouTube channel afterwards. So you can see the whole thing. And I might cut out the comical re-intro that we have to do. So skip 8 minutes. So yeah, if there's questions, please jump in there. If you want to have more in-depth answers, there's so many things we can do. We have the space. Anthony, do you have more questions?
Yeah, I do. Karen, I stalked your stuff. I stalked your YouTube stuff. So I'm pretty sure this was your facility, but in 2017, I heard that it was raided by poachers. Was that right?
Yes, that's a good question. Thanks for that, Anthony. So it wasn't our facility.
It wasn't yours. Interesting.
No. So that is actually how the orphanage started. We had 2 calves that were orphaned from poaching that we had sent to that facility for care, because we didn't have the skills. And then after about 14 months or so, they got raided. Some of the orphans were shot. It was a horrendous story, absolutely horrific. But the security at the site was now becoming a massive concern. So we had to move those calves out of the area as quickly as possible. So we wanted to bring those calves back to the reserve. And so that's when we put a BOMA app and put some basic structures in place for those 2 orphans. That facility shut down. And then, like I said, it's just, people heard that we had been looking after rhino calves and they had an orphan and asked if we could sort of give them support and help and take the calf. And so we did, and it was one after the other. And next minute, I had a fully blown facility that keeps expanding. And yeah, so, and that was out of need. Like I said, it wasn't something we wanted to take on. Definitely not would have done that in sober mind, but I have no regrets today. It's been extraordinarily rewarding, but it's been extraordinary hard work.
What a story. Wow. Yeah. I mean, so you hadn't really put out to do this, but it was just more of a necessity from helping the community. That's really special.
And I can fully jump on there with Karen. It's enough work to manage an anti-poaching unit with the rhino poaching crisis, but the Zululand Conservation Trust is working in so many other capacities in the province of KwaZulu-Natal, and that's a big rural and remote province. So hats off to the trust and the team. Karen has an amazing team of people, many of them good friends, and there's so many cool things happening. And, people always ask in conservation, oh, why is it so expensive? Well, rhinos are the umbrella species of so many different efforts. without rhino conservation, so many other things aren't possible, and so many other things don't get attention. And because of rhino protection in a habitat, pangolins get better protection. There's a safe space to do release and reintroduction for many different locations. There's teams and staff who can manage it, alongside job opportunities for local community members, seasonal work, and so many other things. But adding an orphanage on top of that, my goodness, is that a lift?
Well, I must add in here, though, Mark, you guys have got involved and jumped, when we got busy with orphans, or Mike and them reached out. I actually can't actually recall exactly how that connection took place, but, and they came to give us a hand and helped us with. We did self-defense training with the carers as a result of the potential concern with what happened at the other facility, provided us with all sorts of training support, and donated towards our cause, and have been partners with us ever since. I mean, Mike and I have been at it for over 8 years, probably nearly 10 now. So it's been a long road. And, the work Global Conservation Force does and the amount of support that they've given us, I know if I'm in really big trouble, I can pick up the phone to Mike and be like, dude, can you help?
That's so amazing.
I will always get a yes, or I'm going to try and see what I can do for you. And yeah, they are an amazing team. I take my hat off to him, and Mike has been visited the facility lots, and also provided a lot of training himself for our rangers and carer staff. Yeah, so great partners. Just to add that in there.
Awesome.
I mean, honestly, I wish I could spend more time. One of the things in our space is GCF tries to maintain its mobility so we can be flexible and work with partners. One of our bigger goals in the future would be, buying a piece of land next to one of our already established reserve partners to drop the fence line. Exactly. And so they can expand the corridor, the habitat, and we can have another, footing of a base in place. And it's because there's so much need, and wildlife and human-based needs are the same. In the end of the day, safety, shelter, and we need food and resources. And there's a really healthy way to balance many of these wild spaces or places that have been damaged, and getting them back to wild, where rural communities can have employment, animals have the space for what they need. But it's always a pleasure working with the Zululand Conservation Trust team and everybody involved. Let me see. I think we had a couple more questions here.
Yeah, I think Bowen had a really good question. Actually, there's a few. Beautiful.
Yeah. Okay, so let me go back here really quick. How to catch poachers. Well, this is a fun game. Necessarily, and I'm a weird person who thinks it's fun, not when they have the advantage. Now, in any type of conflict where you're trying to catch somebody, someone having the advantage is not what you want against you, right? Now, unfortunately, when it comes to rhino areas, the poachers have all the card deck before you. They have the opportunity to work informants, try to turn people. They have a lot of money, much more than conservation. And when they send people in, we don't know that. So you have to work many different networks. So a very strong ranger team is the core aspect of how you catch poachers, how they move, what they're trained in, how fit they are, and the supporting technology is how you're going to catch them. Now, Karin, if you're comfortable talking about this, let's go into live scenario situation. Teams are deployed, and you want to talk about, which I know you've done yourself hundreds of times as well. Karin does not sit behind a desk. She is in the field running teams, and she's jumping in everything, which I have mad respect for. She's out there doing it.
Yeah, so I mean, catching poachers, like you say, Mike, that's no easy task, and unfortunately, they have the upper hand. They've planned ahead. They've know how they're going to go about getting into the park. One of the biggest issues we have is that the nighttime is not we don't have an advantage at night, and they normally come in last light. They'll get into the park while, the sun's sort of setting, and then sit, and they'll hunker down somewhere close to the perimeter until it gets really, really dark, and they will then use moonlight. So normally full moon periods is high risk periods. They'll use the moonlight to then move into the area where they've had information or potentially could encounter rhinos. So firstly, you're trying to pick up tracks at last light, which means that when your patrolling units are doing perimeter fence patrol, they are already it's already too dark for them to even pick up footprints that have crossed the fence. These poachers anti-track. In other words, they make an effort to hide their spoor, which means it's even harder to do. And then, even if you are able to have picked up that there were guys that have come into the park, now you're trying to catch them. And how do you do that when it's dark? Pitch black at night, got a little bit of moonlight, and you're walking in amongst rhinos and lions and elephants and all the dangerous game as well. So you're trying to keep yourself safe from dangerous game and also safe from poachers while entering into a reaction situation where you are having to apprehend them. One of the important tools that we have in the toolbox is our canine unit, which Global Conservation Force has fully funded and set up for us, which we are very grateful for. The beauty about dogs is that they allow us to track at night because they don't use their eyes, but they use their nose. And therefore, we are able to follow up on spoor. The guys, everyone's like, well, just use a flashlight. You cannot do that because you will be illuminating yourself and potentially putting yourself at risk and get shot by poachers. So the canine unit is critical. They can then follow up on the tracks, follow up after these guys that have come into the park, and then formulate a reactive plan so that we can make an arrest. Drones are also very useful tools. The drones nowadays with thermal capacity is absolutely incredible. But you still need boots on the ground. Drone's not going to put handcuffs on someone.
I love that. So we get all the time, why don't you, why don't you, why don't you? And we would love to 90% of the time. And most of it comes to cost. Can you afford a $20,000 drone with cameras that could crash once and you can't replace it? Mm-hmm. Or would that supply your entire Ranger team's annual salary based on a fair wage for a US to South African Rand conversion? Many times in conservation, we're having to take the road of something sliding off the table. So what right now is the most advantageous? What right now is going to change the game with us with what we can get? And trust me, if we had every system possible, we would be cashing out on all of them. And if we had a surplus of extremely skilled labor to run all stations and we weren't worried about salaries and next year's budgets and how many baby rhinos are coming in, we would do it. I think drones are a great topic on that one because there's a threshold of what they're good for in the path, like the cost range. So going past a certain threshold, it's too expensive and it's not as usable for us because the quality of a very trained ranger with his canine and night vision, if we can afford it. So putting that out there, night vision on average for a decent set is going to run $5,500 US for the kind that we could possibly use. And then you got to get your entire team with it. And then they have battery issues and they junk up, don't work. One gets broken, stepped on. It's a lot of risk. That's also when you're talking about, let's say 5 sets of night vision, that could be your patrol vehicle that you need to replace because it's taken a hell of a beating over the last year. Karin, you have a couple more points there, right?
Yeah, absolutely. So I think, it's important for people to understand that there's not one solution to this, not when it comes to apprehending poachers or trying to catch poachers or caring for rhinos or running a game reserve and doing your wildlife management work. There's not one solution. We have to use all the tools in the toolbox, being highly skilled rangers, which you guys help us with in terms of all of our training, which is critical. You need boots on the ground. You need people that are also dedicated. You need a handler behind the canine. The canine's not just running amok without anyone following behind them.
Yeah.
And then the drones is just another tool in the toolbox. So in a normal reaction situation, the drone's not going to necessarily catch the poachers. It's not necessarily going to detect that the poachers have come into the park. If the drone is not flying over that section of the park at that very moment in time, it will miss those guys that have come into the park. So, but the drones are very useful in order for us to detect when these suspects are now on the run, where they are heading to, which direction they are going, so that we can put stopper groups out on a potential exit point, so that we can get ahead of them. So the eyes in the sky does help, but it is one of all of the tools that we use.
Very
Great
interesting.
answer. So guys, I just want to give a timestamp. We have about 10 minutes left. And everybody, if you have questions, we're going to try to jump to them. I see that we have several more in the mix. I'm going to go to one that's a little sensitive. It's on the live stream from our Instagram page. And this one is, as you know, Kenya has a policy where poachers can be killed. Do you think this policy would help in South Africa's poaching problem? I'm going to just say it point blank, no. Unfortunately, we need to be a lot more crafty in many of our solutions. And I think pitting humans versus wildlife is not a healthy thing in the operations. Every country and culture is different. Kenya's policies are not so clear as just shoot the poachers. There's still a law enforcement engagement for the modus operandi between the two. Basically, there has to be an imminent risk of bodily lethal harm. And so it's not, conservation shouldn't be kill squads, in my opinion. And it creates a lot of friction. One of the examples we use is that if your brother or mother, cousin, sister, daughter was shot, and even if it was, quote, legally acceptable, you would never be okay with that. So in this situation, we are hitting people's family members, even if some of them are part of hardened gangs and criminal efforts. We ultimately want to pursue the criminal conviction with prosecution, and we want the legal system to do the heavy lifting so that the risk and reward variables counter each other. The risk is the risk is jail time, heavy sentencing, and heavy fines, and the reward would be the cash payout for Rhino horn. Karin, you want to speak a little bit to that as well?
Yeah, Mike, I couldn't agree with you more. The biggest issue is that we cannot put animal life above human life. I think when we're going down that road, we are going to create a massive divide in society in terms of, the animal rights people might then start really create, or you have two camps then, basically people that are saying human life is more valuable and animal life is more valuable, and right now we don't have that division in terms of conservation and the wildlife work we do, and the conservationists aren't the enemy. As soon as we start going down that road where human life are no longer valued as conservationists, we are no better off than those that are actually coming into killing rhinos. So definitely not a solution. I don't think it will have an effect on reducing rhino poaching by any means in any event. Unfortunately, these poachers that are coming into the park are also, some of them are doing it because it's a source of income for them. Poverty is a major issue in our country, and in our region it is significant. And so lethal, taking a lethal approach to this would be a massive issue. And morally, ethically, we can't go down that road. I think we need to rather focus our efforts on upliftment, support, and then obviously the anti-poaching side of things by sort of keeping the front door closed as much as we can is important. We just need to keep pushing at it. I think the biggest issue for us, and a lot of people need to understand that, is that public outcry helps solve the rhino poaching crisis. Everyone needs to put their hand up and say, this is not okay with us anymore. We need political support at national and international level, to say we're going to try and combat this. Let's, at least when when poachers are being caught, let's make sure the prosecution is significant, and they don't get out the next day on bail and then, go straight back to what they've done before. I think that's very important. So there's a lot that the public can do to also help us fight the fight, I think, and it's important that everyone sort of knows. If you've got a social media platform or anything like that, share stories about Rhino and the good work being done out there. All of that helps.
Anthony, I can see you itching with a couple more questions there. We are in our last 4-ish minutes of what we got, but I know you got some good questions.
Yeah, I mean, I'll just like kind of, I mean, you folks drove that point home pretty dang well. But I mean, Mike, we were talking a couple of days ago, and you're like, yeah, some of the folks that we're working with right now were ex poachers. They were ex people, and like, having, instead of like a -1, you're having a +1, and that impact is, yeah. I mean, people are such an amazing blank slate that you can really inspire to do good. And even if they're not doing great at that point in their life, I mean, I'm all for the education, clearly. And that's going to also garner way more positive press, instead of what's happening in our world with all the wars. Like, of course, that's negative. But you folks have a really, really admirable and respectful way that you're going about this. And if I could show that to the world, man. Yeah, for either of you, I guess you either take this, but has there been a moment that like 20 years from now you're gonna look back and be like, that was a truly inspiring moment between you and an animal that you're like, I saved this, or I saw like a real like soul, or thank you? Like, was there a moment for either of you that you'd be comfortable sharing?
I'm sure we both have one. Karin, I'll let you go first.
So mine was actually quite recent. I've had a number, but I'll talk to the one that was most recent, I guess. Not, I can't pick between which one's meant more. So we've had 2 orphans, Leko and Tweed, that were at the facility for a long time. Leko came in at a time where we actually rhino poaching, or at least the orphans at that point in time that we had come in, had reduced significantly. And so he was at the facility on his own for a long time. He had a goat friend for companion. They make really good companions.
Wow.
And then later on, Tweety came in, and so they became friends, another rhino. So I'm clear on what species I'm referring to here. And then they'd been at the facility for 3 or 4 years, and very recently, about a month ago, we released the pair of them into the park. I was so stressed, it was crazy, because they're like so precious. And then I think the moment for me was just as they walked off, they sort of stood, looked back at all of us, and I just felt like, I don't know, it's hard to explain it, but seeing that side of things is all the reward I need, all the reward. I don't need anyone else, not a human. Money, nothing gives me as much of a warm feeling in my heart than seeing that happen. So
that's really special. And what a successful finish to a job that you've done. Yeah. And it's not like they're consciously thanking you, but their free existence is what. Yeah, that's special. Well, Mike, we got a minute and 15. You wanna make yours quick?
I mean, so for me, I've had quite a few, and I think honestly, it's been in some of the spaces where we've seen rhinos return that were deemed too dangerous prior. And not that the rhino that itself was giving like a personal one, but going to a place where before they were not there, could not be there, there was no team there, building a team that was community led, community founded, and then launching them on their own and leaving them to their own environment and habitat with the ancestral species of that habitat, and then going there and seeing it kind of back intact and back in full function, really for me was like a strong, powerful revisit of like, dang, this is kind of strong.
Special.
And then I've had my personal ones, but there's so many, it's hard to pick. So we're gonna probably for I think it's the Instagram is gonna set down. It's gonna stop in 13 seconds. I'm gonna see if I can reset it just so we can take a couple more questions. I believe our Facebook Live and our YouTube Lives are gonna continue streaming. I think it's the Instagram channel that's gonna stop. Oh, there it is. So our other channels are still live. So let me see.
Hey,
really,
rock and roll.
Yeah, I'm gonna fix this one on the Instagram. So we're gonna cruise through so we can take a couple more questions in the meantime. I saw some great comments in here. Another one was Karin, this is probably a good one for you, actually. What has been some of the hardest physically, mentally you faced, and how did that help? I mean, there's a lot of hard days in your line of work, specifically with the orphanage.
So hardest, I think emotionally, I would say rather. Being a garden conservation means that we put a little bit more heart into it than the boys are, or boys do at least. So that side of things is gets tough, and one of them was, a lot of them is going to a rhino crime scene. Those days are extraordinarily tough. And one of the instances where I've had a tough day was we had to do a post-mortem on a rhino female that had been shot by poachers. And when we opened the carcass up in search of ballistics, because we're needing to recover the bullets, etc., she had a nearly term calf that she would have given birth to. So those were two animals lost in one incident. So that was definitely a really tough day. And we normally take weeks to recover after those incidents. But we've also had others, mental exhaustion. I mean, we have fires that come into the park. I end up fighting fires for 36 hours straight before I've even, been able to go back home. The teams bring in water and supplies for us that are out there, and we don't go back home until every little ember's put out. So, I mean, it's precious grazing that we have to protect for rhinos. So, we can't burn too much of the grazing, and then winter times comes and these animals are short of resources. So, yeah, and there's a lot of other incidents, but I'll keep us on here for the rest of the night if we had to keep going down the list. Mike, you need to jump in here because I want to hear some of your really tough days, because I know you've had a fair bit of that as well.
I will share one that I think I'm safe to share now. Many days in my early days working as a field ranger in South Africa, specifically on a specialized rhino protection unit in the Greater Kruger, where we worked with not only the police, an investigative branch of the police, and a tactical branch of the police. Over a 24-hour period, we had chased 3 different groups of rhino poachers who hit the same reserve, and they had each shot a minimum of 1 rhino. And I think one of the things, this was 2015. I'm not going to say place. I'll just say Southern Africa. What was going on was that was the heart of the crisis at the peak of the years of the worst activity. And I had been awake for 3 days at that point, and I could not stop going. I couldn't tell myself it was okay to stop because I was one of the trackers and one of the man tracking teams, as well as one of the quick response unit guys. And I was like, we're going to catch him. We're going to catch him. We're going to catch him. Ultimately, we caught one group. And then we had to process the rhino crime scenes. The other groups got away. We didn't catch everybody. The weapon was discarded in between. And then I processed this person in for booking at the police station, only to see them back at the bar 2 days later. I literally wanted to scream. And I was still, my clothes were still stained from the rhino crime scenes, which I still wear. I've been in many crime scenes, rhino, elephant, and human. And I think that was probably one of the hardest ones, was like, no matter how hard you physically try and how good the team is, And at that time, we didn't have all the resources or the equipment we needed. It didn't matter how hard we fought, we were still losing. And I think that feeling was a very deflating situation. And then not only to do that part, but to catch somebody, handcuff them, not get into a physical altercation, and then put them behind a booking and then see them back out again. It just was like pure maddening. I've had many others, but that one I think kind of encompasses the same as some of the other ones. Ironically, I'm kind of weird. Like if something is physically challenging or it's even physically painful, I'm not really too fazed by it. We've been in some really crazy situations with our teams, supporting other units, and those don't ring true to me as hard days, which would normally be uncomfortable. I'm kind of used to like the bug bites, the stings, the sunburns, and not eating for weeks at a time. As a joke, not really. But yeah, I think this field is not one that is just like a plateau of like one simple set of activities. And I think you really, coming into the rhino conservation field, need to be prepared for the long haul. It's not going away tomorrow. We need to keep pushing and fighting. And there's a lot of things that need to be done and a lot of things that need to be kept up. I kind of describe it as like keeping your momentum, like riding a bike on a hill. If you slow down, you start to have to work harder to get back to where you are. And if you stop, it feels excruciating to get moving again. And by stopping, I mean, like if we had a stop of funding or an obstacle to fundraising or, a setback of a major player. I have lost friends in this field as well. I'd probably say those should be noted. I've many of my friends and professional colleagues, it's well over 30 now who've been killed in the line of work. Wow. And so I think to give honor to them and to obviously specifically I'm going to shout out to Karin again here. Keeping the fight going goes past the rhinos at some point. It also comes into this unity of team members and other people fighting, people I don't know, keeping them moving, keeping them going. And the public can play a lot of part in this, just simple donations, simple support, even hitting like on posts so they travel farther or sharing things. So many ways to be involved. You don't have to be in the grit of it. And I actually highly encourage not doing that unless you're really suited for it. I think there's so many ways to get involved in so many different capacities. It doesn't have to be the crazy stuff. So yeah, let's see. We got many, and here's you. Well, we have gone for a little bit longer. I think we caught up on our staggering of the live. I really want to finish here with saying, please go to the Zululand Conservation Trust website. It's zululandconservationtrust.org. Please follow up further on things you can get involved in with Karin's teams. There's more than one. If you have questions and you want to learn how to get involved, you can always reach out to us. We have a myriad of ways of getting involved, from stateside to Europe to parts of Africa. And that includes some professional trainings. I think it's really also important to note that if you would like to go out and either support directly, you can donate directly to Saving Baby Rhinos, or you can also actually volunteer with the rhinos and get some hands-on experience as well as other activities there. And you're really helping support the whole network. Anthony, I think we need to get you out there, man. I think we need to put you out there in some rhino care shifts. And see, I mean, I know you're going to enjoy the whole experience, but I think not only with your outdoor following and your skill sets, I think this was something you would enjoy.
I hope so. And yeah, absolutely. Dang, I wish we coordinated. I'm going to be there next month, but yeah, we'll make it happen. And if you folks are interested in supporting and you still want to have a vacation or an excursion or however you'd like, there are sustainable ecotours that you can look at through Global Conservation Force that directly funds all the stuff that you just heard about as well.
Yeah, I think actually that's a really good point. Karin, sorry, I don't mean to cut you off there. Go ahead.
Oh, no. I was just going to say, I would look forward to Anthony coming to scoop some poop there at the Rhino orphanage and take some of that dirty work off my carer's hands. And
It's funny.
he can get down and dirty with that.
I wanted to volunteer. I wanted to ride horses at this horse stable when I was younger, and they're like, "Oh, we would love your help." And I was like, "Oh, I'm gonna save these horses." And I picked up poop for like 4 hours a day, and
Yes.
they loved me, and it was great. So
It works. I mean,
Yeah.
that's a huge part of the care. You gotta keep them clean.
it is.
100%. You want to look careful, baby rhinos. It's time for feeding, mixing milk, but washing bottles, and then it's cleaning bomas. And there's a whole lot of poop to pick up.
Yeah.
Oh, man.
The rhinos are pretty good poop factories, honestly. They eat a lot of gotta get rid of a lot of that food. So but yeah, thank you guys for hopping on today. Again, if anybody has questions, you can go to our website, globalconservationforce.org. You can go to Karin's website. We have volunteer programs. If you liked what you saw today and you want to just adopt one of the canines to help support Karin's work, you can do that. And you can also donate directly into the campaigns of Saving the Baby Rhinos, which is like multi-encompassing efforts, so many going on. At the end of the day, we want to say thank you all for joining us and thank you for caring. And we hope to see you on another one of these live broadcasts. So thank you guys.
You guys rock. Thank you.
Thank you. Thank you, Anthony. Thanks, Mark. Thanks so much.
Karin. Thanks, Anthony.
Bye, Karin.
Appreciate it,
Thank you,
guys.
Mike. Alrighty.